What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Worship Guitar Show. Great to see you. Number 28. I kind of looked at the clock, thought about what I wanted to share with you guys, and I was pondering number 28. That's a ridiculous amount of time that seems like no time at all. And that's kind of the moral of the story. Time goes by really, really, really quickly. And if we're not really aware of how we carpe the diem, that is to say, how we seize the day can seize us. And I know that sounds trite and maybe a little bit shallow, but hopefully will bring some great meaning to kind of this whole concept of 5 things that we can do to be better at what we do as worship guitar players. And so, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Great to see everybody here. Let me just do a little poking in here on the social media front and make sure everything is all groovy. Good. Excellent, excellent. That looks great over there. And we should be live over there on the tube of you. Yep, there we go. Excellent. Okay. So, first of all, I would encourage everybody to kind of share any of their thoughts about kind of what's been challenging them in terms of like, hey, I have a hard time with this. Not enough advance notice on getting the songs. Let's see, getting the songs in a YouTube video that's in the wrong key. Need I share more? Hey, thanks so much, Rick. Pleasure to be here. Thank you. They shut down the power, but fortunately we were not in harm's way. Appreciate that. So for those of you who don't know, I was without power for about 48 hours, but it actually was nice to be able to actually power down, and it was great. So thanks, Rick. I really appreciate it. So the thing is that there are things that are impediments to our being able to get our job done, and part of this is to provide some holistic sanity to the fact that we're part of a larger process where sometimes there are things that are just completely out of our control, like getting the YouTube videos, and that's sometimes a matter of leading up, as I like to describe. And that's not actually one of the 5 things, but I want to give a little preamble here so we can frame some of this, because before we kind of zero in on the target on you and me, I want to point out to the fact I'm in and do a little. I got a call from a worship leader friend, and there's a church that is in dire need of a little bit of resuscitation in their worship department, and there's just been a whole bunch of stuff that's happened. Just kind of a bunch of the senior leaders have left, so I got a call from a friend that's a dear worship leader friend, and they were like, "Hey, do you know anybody that can maybe help out with guitar a little bit?" And I was like, "She's really asking really nicely." He's like, "Doug, will you please come and help out just a little bit?" And I was like, "Stephanie, do you want me to come play?" And she was like, "Please." And I was like, "Oh, that's great." She's one of my favorite people. I worked very closely with her and at a larger church in the area here. And so I'm really excited about kind of being able to help a church that could use some help. And all churches, honestly, have got some bit of stuff hanging out. Like, big ships have big barnacles. How's that for an analogy? So, with that said, the perspective of all ships, we all have kind of stuff that makes our job harder. And so, what my goal tonight here is to talk through some of the practical things about what we can do individually. So, let's get right up to the first one, getting right straight in. Okay. Oh, who am I calling out there? Okay. Number 1 mistake that guitar players make, probably above and beyond all others, is they play at 1 dynamic with the right hand, or maybe 1, 2, or 3 dynamics with the right hand. And that's kind of all they do. And I totally understand it. And it's largely because nobody has usually said, hey, you know what? Find all those gradations in there. And as a part is cruising along, gradually build. I'm working on a demo for something. And there's this thing that I was playing this part, actually it's for the GT1000 core. And I was playing this part to demonstrate how the box, kind of the tone swells as I raise the dynamics up. I'm going from this quieter thing to getting louder and getting louder and getting louder. And usually these days I have a tendency to think on a spectrum of 1 to 99. I don't necessarily hit all 99 points in that spectrum, but I am aware of the fact that, if with about 99 gradations of from super quiet to super loud, if I'm thinking that I'm somewhere in that 99, then I'm thinking about the other 98, right? I'm thinking, where can I be there? Ooh. Having never been in any band, how is dealing with others in a worship band different than being in a touring band? I'm going to put that on hold, but that comes back to one of the other points that is, I'll fly that flag. Hang on a second. Where is that puppy? Hold on. Is that this one? Not being a team player. We're going to get there. But that's a great point, Chris. And there are some nuances. I'm not going to take that bait, but boy, is there a lot to chomp into on that front. Oh, my word. Okay. So about the the five things, I really took the five most obvious things that I was like, oh, these are just, I see these mistakes made over and over and over again. And if one or two of them allows you to fine tune your worship parameters, that'd be great. The other thing that I don't have set up at this moment is the ability to pull in comments from Facebook because of the way I connect to Facebook. And you probably hear me talk about this every week, but I want to make sure that I get everybody in the loop here. So I can get everybody in the loop here. There we go. And again, thanks so much for everybody that joined us this evening. Great to see you. Lonnie, hello. Corey, hello. Pamela, hello. Great to see you guys. North Central Washington, hi everyone. North Carolina, awesome. And Texas, awesome, 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 awesome. As a matter of fact, if I were slightly intelligent here, I'd open up this other one. So no, I'll see everybody's comments there. Good. Okay, so here's the thing. The right hand, the biggest, and I'm going to get off this point in just a moment, but the biggest complaint that I hear guitar players make about gear is like, oh, I just don't like the way it sounds. And somewhere within a range of 1 to 99, you can quite often find a sound that's hiding inside an amplifier that may not necessarily be your jam. But finding that sweet spot, you are like, oh, there it is a big deal. Okay, moving right along. Let's get to, oh, I love this one. Ho, ho, ho. Not listening to the drummer. I want to jump back to this, playing at one dynamic level with your picking hand and not listening to the drummer. Okay, I want to intermingle those a little bit. Let's forget the right hand business for a second because that's a tone thing. Many guitar players are not super dynamic in their playing. And one of the important things is being able to kind of map an entire song, and I like to use a numbered system of either 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, and you put a number associated, 1 being the quietest, 10 being the loudest, unless you want to go to 11. I'll humor that. Somebody was singing to that. But the idea is you map each section, and ideally kind of the first verse, let's just say it's a 3, the second verse is a 4, and maybe the third verse is a 5 or 6. And the idea, what's going on, Bruce? The idea is that we kind of have these gradations as the song evolves, right? If you make the analogy of a meal, you start off with the appetizer, then you have this main course, and then you've got the dessert, right? You want to take people on this journey dynamically. Watching what the drummer will do is a huge part of this. And for those of us that double on bass, being aware of what the drummer is doing is such an important giveaway. And I'll share where I think I learned this first. I got a chance to play with Jeff Campitelli, who played with Joe Satriani for a long, long, long time. And I remember being in a rehearsal with him, watching his hands, and just going, he's telling me everything I need to know about how to play great. If I can just kind of lock in with what he's doing, the hands, because the snare drum is generally pulled back a little bit from where the click will be. And that just adds the feel inside the groove. The hi-hat can be right on top of the click, but the idea is that, you can also pull the eighth notes back a little bit, or you can begin to take the second eighth note and swing it just a little tiny, tiny bit. That is to say, if we had an eighth note triplet, which is going 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, and we got rid of that number 1, this little guy here, we go 1, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. That's basically a doom, 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 doom. But if instead of going 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and we begin to pull this guy, boom, doom, 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 doom. We're adding this little bit of swing, that is to say, taking that second eighth note and pulling it a little bit towards that third eighth note triplet. That's not, it's not, but it's, wasn't expecting me to sing tonight, were you? But the point being is that is something that you'll see. And then usually the snare will come. So all of a sudden there's all this give and take happening in the drum kit. And that's your. And all of a sudden, the interplay that's happening between the drummer's hands, the kick drum is almost always right smack on the beat or on the end of the beat. So it'll line up, if you will, on the grid or on the click. If you're on an eighth note, or quarter on almost always the kick drum's going to be there. But the idea of catching that interplay between the drum set, it's a set of drums, and they're not all going, it's not like a little, drummer. You wind them up and they kind of play away. Really, really important. And that, if you're hanging out with the drummer there, it's where 1,000 grooves have happened. I can't express how important that is. Take it to 11. Thank you so much. All right, so let me just poke in here real quick. Hello, Forrest. What's going on? Buffalo, New York. Thanks so much for tuning in. Really, 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 really appreciate it. Okay. So that gets us to numero 3. These diatonic numbers. Now, we talked a little bit last week about these modes and whatnot. Let's see. I think I still had a couple little slides up from that. But the thing about these diatonic numbers is very, very important, is that if you think about the 7 notes of the major scale, the majority of the music that we play is based around the 1. So it doesn't matter whether we're in G major or A major or E major. That's our 1 chord. And so let's just pick the key of C. Let's say the C major, F major, and G major are our 1, 4, and 5. So you just begin to think of them as 1, 4, and 5. But most importantly, let's 1, 4, 5. You can begin to hear the 1, 4, and the 5. The 1 and the 4, it's perfect fourth, and then a half step below the 4, it's a 3, and then there's a 4 and the 5, there's the 6, and there's the 1 and a half step below the 1 is the 7, and there's the 1 and a whole step below the 1 is the 2. So now I can go from the 1 up to the 2, I can go from the 1 to the 4 down to the 3, I'm at the 4, I already know the 5, and then the 5 above the 5 is a 6, and the 1, 1, there's my 1, 1, 7, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 4, 5, 6, 5, 4, 3, 1, 2. I think I might have jumped out of key for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 4, 5, 4, 1, 7, 1, 2, 1, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 7, 1. So I'm showing you how to use the 1, 4, and the 5 to jump to those other notes in the key. And the point being is if you can simply memorize the sound of the 1, 4, 1, da, 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 the sound of that, and use that as a vehicle to be able to kind of musically hear the chord changes. One of the things that's magical about this, and I used to do this in the car ride over when I was music director, I've spent enough time developing my ear. I can be driving in a car and I can identify the tonal center, and most of the worship music we play is based on the major scale, so it means it's literally kind of the tonal center is the 1. And then you just kind of learn to hear the changes, and I could map out the chord changes in my head on the way to rehearsal. And then I would get there, right? You all right? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. This is happening. Make sure you get this little motif over there. All right, we're going to go this, 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 and this, and I call it to changes, and everybody could do that. And the ability to do that, it's not rocket science. There you go. So, it's not... it's not something, that's radically hard. 1 4 5 4 1, and if you can get used to singing the 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1. Now I learned something new this past weekend in working with my students, um, and it was not everybody is confident singing. But I found that just about everybody can whistle in tune. That was kind of a happy discovery. And I had a student that I know they're not comfortable singing in front of me. And I was like, well, what if I get them to whistle? And sure enough, they were able to whistle just fine. And your average strings are tuned in a perfect fourth. So if you just get used to singing or whistling the major scale and think of it as 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1, even if you have to sit down with a piano and just with the right keys from C. Do I have that diagram around here? Do I have the piano diagram? Piano diagram, are you here? Hang on a second. Let's see if I got my piano diagram handy. If not, I can pull it up. That's easy to do. But the point being is it's literally sitting down at the piano and playing along with the right keys and just getting used to kind of 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1, right? Okay. So why is this valuable? As I mentioned before, it means you can be away from your instrument and go, hey, this is what that relationship is, and in your brain go, oh, this is what's happening there. The other thing is, so a minute ago I was talking about, marking diatonic numbers for each different section of the song. Well, another thing you want to begin to map is like, the pre-chorus goes to the 3 chord. And, maybe the chorus goes to the 6 chord. It's the first chord of that section. And by being able to think of the numeric relationship of each one of those chords as it relates to the relative one of the major scale, it allows us to have a way of putting this stuff in a framework that we can make sense of it, which is always a great thing to do. All right, so hopefully, I lost two. I guess it must have been my whistling or my singing. My apologies. All right, first of all, any feedback from anyone thus far? Not everybody at once. Okay. Well, I will look and appreciate when said feedback comes in. So let's move away from the diatonic numbers. Oh, great. I've got the slide up here like an idiot. All right, hang on a second. All right, so in addition to the diatonic numbers, we talked about this last time, the relationship between the scales and the chords. Without going into ridiculous detail, because we did that in the last session, the ability to have an understanding, I'm sorry, the tech. Yeah, no, I already moved past it. Thanks, though. Technical support was letting me know I was stuck on the slide, which I appreciate. Thank you very much. Fortunately, I figured that out. All right, so as I was saying, appreciate it. But you know what? We'll take some espresso along with that technical support slide. Thank you. All right, so the deal is, when we understand that scales are where the chords come from, and if you didn't get a chance to watch last week, please go back and see. The interesting thing is I kind of poke in on these things. Last week's session on Facebook had over 1,000 views. I was like, holy cow. That meant a lot of people were like, yes, I want to understand it. So please go back and watch that or rewatch it. I think there was a lot of value there. And if you have any questions about that, we can come back and revisit that, because that obviously, judging by the number of people that really tuned in on that, it meant to me is like, okay, this is something that matters to people. So the reason that's important is, first of all, understanding why you play a major chord, for example, the 1, why you play a minor chord to the 6, that it reflects the 1, 3, and 5 of the major scale, the 1 flat 3 5 of the minor scale, which is based on the 6th note of the major scale, which is why at the 6 we play a minor chord. The 6 is minor and minor is the 6. There's a couple of bits of nuance there. The 6th mode is called the minor scale, and the type of chord you play there is also called a minor scale. So when I think about the 6th chord, I'm thinking about the type of chord that's played there. That chord comes from the minor scale. When I think about the 5, it has a major chord, and that comes from the Mixolydian mode. So the idea is we're basically scarfing up the first, third, and fifth notes of the major scale, or the Dorian, or the Phrygian, or the Lydian, or the mixed Lydian, minor, or the Locrian when we're thinking about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 chords. And so when we think of a 3, 6, 2, 5 chord progression, for example, it's really taking, at the most simple level, we're taking the triad based off the third mode, which is the Phrygian mode. It's a minor triad. The triad based off the sixth mode, which is the minor mode, which is a minor triad. The 2, we're basically taking a minor triad from the 2 chord, which is based on the second mode, the Dorian mode, and the 5 major chord based off the mixed Lydian. So that 3, 6, 2, 5 is going to have a very specific type of chord, minor, 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 major, that is basically stolen from the Phrygian, minor, Dorian, and mixed Lydian modes, which are based on the 3, 6, 2, and 5 tones of the relative major. And the great thing is you can just kind of take that around and move it from key to key, and it will continue to serve you like that. So it means that if you can map the bass notes and kind of figure, like I was saying, 1, 4, 5. So if your version was 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, you would go major chord at the 1, major chord at the 4, minor chord at the 3, major chord at the 5, and you could basically play your way through just about any worship song, just playing very simple major and minor chords, and nobody would cry foul on the play. Okay. That gets us to our next point here. Which is, oh, thank you so much. Mucho gracias. Let's see. No, that's not the one I wanted. Hold on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Okay. Not being a team player. That was what I wanted. Okay, this gets back to the question that Chris had. And I'm just presuming, since I'm not seeing any comments, that you guys are like, yes, speaking to me, my love language. So, having never been in a band, how is dealing with others in a worship band different than in a touring band? Ooh, that's such a great question on so many different levels. Well, first of all, that falls soundly into this whole team player business. It's one of the things that always amazes me about mainstream bands and musicians, and kind of, hanging out with some of the folks that I've known in the mainstream music scene, and thinking about, we got a singer, and that somehow the singers always seem to, like, they would go off to another country and wave that flag in that band. And, once you found a great singer, it was great until they left for some other band. And the lack of loyalty in mainstream bands was one of the things, they were in the band, everybody's hanging out, it's this amazing bonding experience, and then they're gone. Or the band breaks up, or something happens. And I know this even from my, like, instrumental endeavors, like, we're hanging out very intensely, and then the moment's over, and everybody scurries. It's one of the strange things, but it's one of the natural things that happen. And in some senses, that same thing is replicated in worship teams, where we come together for very intense periods of time, and those periods of time end. Now, how is it different? One of the biggest ways is that in a worship team, as opposed to playing for the glory of the lead vocalist or the guitar player's solo, we're doing it to hopefully make it such that the pastor's message, there's something in the room that is transformative. The Holy Spirit's moved, and people are not where they were when they walked in the room. And that's where the team player thing really comes in. It's just like, being a team player means that, you're going to take one from the team, for the team from time to time. Which means that if they, call them and say, hey, Doug, we don't want you to play electric guitar for the next year. We really need an acoustic guitar player. Can you do that for us? And I'm like, I love acoustic guitar, so I would be down with it. But honestly, my time would better be spent probably with an electric guitar or a bass in my hands. But the need is bigger than the need, right? And that's one of the things that I don't think gets explained a lot, and doesn't get explained well. That term voluntold is the one that comes to mind. And, not everybody in the worship community is great at diplomacy. And that's where being a team player is kind of like, the answer is yes. And, this is kind of one of the things that I'm keenly aware of, as a leader of sorts, is you can lead with a yes. You can lead with a, well, maybe, which means that there's some terms, or you can lead with a no. And I've been in lots of different situations with leaders who led across that spectrum. Generally speaking, leaders who lead with a yes and people who follow with a yes get somewhere together a lot faster than leading with a no or following with a no. Because it means that, sometimes God is prompting somebody to go someplace that they need them to go that may not be the obvious path. I mean, if I think if all of us take a look back at, our lives and the course of where we got to, I'd say most of the time, the places that we would have engineered for us to go look a lot different than the place that God had in mind for us to go, right? So with that said, we want to be mindful of how we chart that course. So the biggest differences, I'll kind of go through them because it's interesting. There's some pros and cons. Your average mainstream band will rehearse 3 to 4 days a week. I know. Can you believe it? I mean, they actually work. What is that? It's kind of one of the reasons why, it's a funny thing is that, there's, you become culturalized. And one of the things about being culturalized with your worship community thing is like, it seems like asking somebody to rehearse 1 day a week seems like a big ask. And I was like, wait a second, what happened with all my mainstream bands where, 3 or 4 nights a week were like, it's because we were serious about it, right? And we're like, wait a second, how is it that we're not serious about Sunday morning? This is one of the big mysteries to me. So to be completely honest, that's one of the big differences that I still don't understand. I think if I were really honest, we're soft. Yep, I said it. We're soft. We're just really kind of like, hey, 1 night's okay. We don't even have to do one. It's okay. People are busy. I'm just like, actually, if we want to kick butt on Sunday, maybe we put in 2 nights. 1 night for that's just a sectional, where the vocalists are off in one room and the musicians are in the other. So that when we get together on Thursday night, kapow! Yeah, how about that? How much better would your worship team be if you rehearsed 2 nights a week? I'm a troublemaker, what can I say? But I love it. That's the kind of trouble I love. Because you know what, God? I think, we get used to being, bringing second best sometimes with our time. And I don't want to, diminish valuable time with the family. Super important. But again, too much is given, much is required. If we're meant to really raise the roof on Sunday, in kind of all the natural and supernatural senses, like that's 1 day a week. How much how much more could we do? To really take things to a different level. So that's one of the big differences. The other thing is that the level of preparedness, honestly, comparatively speaking, the majority of worship musicians I've encountered are fractionally as prepared as the mainstream musicians I know. Mainstream musicians I know actually know the material. If I'm really brutally honest, if I'm like, I'm going to pull the question up here just in case somebody comes in mid-question and they don't know what I'm kind of going on about. Now, dealing with others, let's go there. I just remember a scene in a parking lot in Reno with a bunch of variously intoxicated band members, myself being sober, and watching people behave badly. One person in particular badly towards me. And fortunately, I've never really had that particular flavor of finding out. So that's what you really think of me. It just takes you getting that intoxicated to actually let it go. I think in a perfect world, especially with good leadership, when we have differences in a worship team, the good news is that we've, theoretically removed the substances and removed the things that really get in the way of people's lives, where we're all trying to get more like Jesus. And it means that we're at a place where if we have challenges in relationships interpersonally, we can sit down with or without the leader of the team and talk them through. We can, most importantly, arguably the biggest difference uh, with one another is praying for each other. I think that's, and not that I don't pray for the people that, I've been in mainstream situations with, but it's different when you're praying as a team. The funny thing is, before I got saved, I heard this great story because I got hired to play on a worship team before I actually got saved, and there was a big conference down in the South Bay, and I heard about, like, there was this car full of people power praying for me to get saved, and I just love that. I mean, the care and consideration, because I wasn't in a good spot, and that these people, that some of whom barely knew me, but they were like, we're praying that this guy's going to get saved. I was just like, something about that, it's kind of like the washing of each other's feet. That gets down in the grooves, and you realize there's not that many people that are actually gonna pray for you like that. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly powerful. Um, Hang on a second. I got some feedback here. Hang on a second. And I think already said hello for us, Chris. I don't know that too many bands that are just part-time bands where everyone works full-time in a day job and still we rehearse 3 times a week. But you are comparing worship team members to professional musicians because most of us aren't professional worship team members. Most of us have day jobs. Chris, so here's the thing: is like, hopefully I'm not coming across as a hard ass because that's not my point. Um, no, kind of all the bands that I played in, and we all actually worked. Like most of my buddies that were in bands worked construction. They actually worked really, really hard. And here's the other thing: is because I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, to exist here, you actually have to. It's like the cost of living's nuts. It's way more nuts now, which is why there hasn't been a band come out of the San Francisco Bay Area for 5 years. It's done. Like there are no more Journeys, no more Third Eye Blinds, no more Counting Crows. The Counting Crows and Third Eye Blind are probably the last big bands that came out of here. The .coms basically bought up all the warehouse space, and it kind of like, and the rents went up so high that we just kind of lost our scene. But there was a period of time where pretty much everybody I knew worked. And it wasn't like, there was a range of people actually. I worked with people that had a range of, but they were all working, and working 5 days a week. We worked hard, but the thing is that when it came time to rehearse, it was like, and some of the folks I played with, professional musicians, full time, but most of them had a day job, and that's how they could afford to do it. Um, and that's not, so the thing is that, so that's just, I should say that's how it was here. And the thing is that I remember when I got saved and started playing with the worship team that I was in, Atma, the drummer that I played with at the time, he and I would spend 2 or 3 hours rehearsing before rehearsal, before the band would come in. And it was just because we really wanted it to be that good. We wanted the worship leaders to kind of come in and not even think about it. We actually didn't really even usually tell them. They would just kind of come in, and we would already had a couple 3 hours where we were just banging on the grooves, click going at ridiculous volumes, owning that material because we wanted to create an atmosphere. And the interesting thing is that not all teams rehearse like that, and it's here's the thing is I will say this is that um, the bands that I was in, we rehearsed 2 or 3 nights a week, always. You wouldn't stay in the band if you couldn't do at least 2 nights. And it was usually I was usually in 2 or 3 bands at the same time. So I was kind of cobbling the schedules together. And it usually meant I was rehearsing a good 5 nights a week. Uh, After teaching law, I used to teach 40, 50 hours a week. But, the thing is rehearsal, ironically, the amount of rehearsal time going per gig time was really interesting because there were a lot of bands around then. and at the various stages of what then was. But you would gig once a month, twice a month, sometimes not even that often. But the idea was to continue to rehearse. And I remember, even, once I had a record out, the band still got together twice a week to rehearse because we wouldn't just kind of, revive it for a show. The idea is we wanted to evolve. I think that's one of the biggest difference between mainstream um, musicians and worship musicians is the concept that we're going to be better. And that's kind of one of the things with worship musician. The tagline is better by Sunday. Interestingly enough, I realize how that Doug centric that is, which is for me is like, how do I say this? Why would I possibly want to play in a band that's just as happy to be as good as they were last week as this week or the next week? It's like that's so setting the bar here, like as opposed to like, hey, you know what? We can set the bar a little bit higher every week. And when I was a worship and creative arts director, I was sensitive to the fact that people, especially in the Bay Area, there's a lot of travel time where we were, there's not just the job, there's not just the food. It's why having rehearsal at an intelligent time, like a 6 o'clock rehearsal, dude, Chris, like I am so with you. If you don't give people a chance to get home, get clean, get a little bite to eat, if they need to kiss the little ones, like 7 o'clock, bare minimum, and then run a tight ship, right? The 6 o'clock rehearsal made no sense. And I had a couple churches that did. I was kind of like, and I wasn't a bad camper about it. I could make it work. But I got to tell you, hungry musicians, again, there's the practical of it. Hungry musicians are not necessarily the most productive musicians. You're not going to get your best out of them. Just saying. Oh, that's good stuff, you guys. All right, so let's see here. All right, any comments? Chris, first of all, thank you. Bring it. Here's the thing: is that, and I appreciate you sharing your heart there. That's and it is different in different geographical areas, and unfortunately, the Bay Area is no longer a place where there is a lot of homegrown music being played. It's really sad. Breaks the heart, actually. All right. Well, with that said, I'm going to riff a little bit. Chris, I'm going to dismiss you from the screen. I'm going to dis-Chris you from the screen. And I'm actually going to, I'm going to revel in this. No, I wanted this other relationship. There we go. Not being a team player. Okay, so I had two that I kind of queued up as relationships. So not being a team player, it's an interesting thing. I remember really early on when I got saved, I kind of became friends with this worship drummer guy, and he could really play. And I remember hearing him, and he had gone to play at this church that he was at, and the worship pastor said, we're gonna kind of go country. And I don't necessarily know about country worship. I guess maybe in Nashville. They were in Michigan, as I recall. And this guy was like, I refuse, I quit. And I was like, man, and the interesting thing is that I actually love country music. Actually, I will say I wasn't always a big country music fan, but like country music, if you're on a highway in a car driving, like country music has got something very special about it. And I'm a big fan of, baritone Telecaster too. There we go. I got something from you, Chris. Hang on, give me a second. I'll poke in on that. So the thing is, but it was so clearly about them versus actually about. Look at that. Thank you. As opposed to like, hey, what the worship pastor needs to go there. They need a drummer. I just need to show up and be their back. I need to be their glue. And I think how do I say this? We live in a time where increasingly people are fixated on the me and not the we. That was well said, I think, for all the ways I could have said it. And safe. And it doesn't seem like it's going any closer to the we anytime soon. And that's the thing about the church, is that we are supposed to be an example in a good sense of the word, right? And so our ability to speak weeness into our lives and into our community and demonstrate that unity, right? Because unity comes when people are coming together. Unity is not about when everything's groovy and it's like, hey, this is awesome, we're all marching in the same direction. Unity is when I'm wanting to go this way and you're wanting to go that way, and we go, how do we find the way together, right? That's that. And honestly, the biggest growth happens for me in seasons where I don't want to go the direction I'm being pulled. I interviewed, it was actually a very interesting thing. I'll share a story with you because this is going to speak to somebody. I can feel it. So I was interviewing, we did this thing with Gateway Worship, and I was interviewing the songwriters about the song. And there was a guy that kind of hopped on the live stream and had this slightly combative thing, like, I don't believe in songwriting sessions, and I think it's prescribed, and I think it's this and it's that. And, I'm in the middle of this live stream, and I'm watching this comment. I'm like, all right, how do I navigate this? I was like, okay, I'm going to bring this comment in. I'm saying, hey, there was a comment in the chat here. They're talking about this, and they brought this up. It's really easy to see because I just been reading something about Desmond Child, who, in case you don't know, is like a bazillionaire pop songwriter for the likes of Bon Jovi and fill in the blanks. Huge songwriter. Where that kind of songwriting is really about formula. And it's really easy to look at what happens in Nashville with these songwriting sessions, where a lot of the songs that we sing in church are crafted and not go, maybe there is some of this formulaic stuff going on. And there certainly is a degree of formula in the music that we listen to, whether we want to say it or not. Is it by design, or is it just kind of like, we like the way this sounds? I'm not going to get into that. I like the way it sounds, so that's one of the reasons I'm not going to get into it. But I asked the songwriters, I said, this is an interesting point. A lot of people would presume that it is this formulaic approach of what happens in Nashville. Could you clarify that? And the one songwriter really jumps in and said, the interesting thing is, only the songs that really have something on them, where there's really genuinely something on the song itself, rise to the top. And not only that, the only songs that ever meant anything to me and God really smiled on, I had to sacrifice. He had to give up some piece of the song that really meant something and blah, blah, blah. But he said, I just thought of it. It's only those songs where something, I had to carry it up the mountain and be ready to burn it in the fire. Those are the ones that God breathed on. And I thought that was so cool because it was out of the willingness to embrace the question that we got the deeper answer. And so it's not like we just have to march along and just go, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever, sir. That's not what I'm saying, because I do believe that there is honor that comes in being submitted to authority, and submitted is a very difficult word for a lot of people. But I also understand that when you're submitted to your leaders, two very important things happen. One, you're under their cover, and two, you're under their cover. If there's any bullets going to be flying, their covering is deflecting you from taking those bullets. And that's an important thing. There's an accountability that when you're not submitted to your leaders, you don't necessarily want to step out from underneath that covering. The other thing is when you are submitted to your leaders, that's an atmosphere that God really loves to populate and habit, right? And I think what's happened when we're submitted under our leadership in a healthy way, especially, we move forward together. And, instead of this, like, the drummer dragging, I don't like country music, and the guitar playing, I want my amp back, just shut up and just do what's asked with the right heart. And you may find that you loved it more than you ever could have believed, right? Oh, that's all I'm saying. All right, Chris, let me read your comments here. Thank you, my brother. Okay. So it's also different in different points of life. Absolutely. If you want people who are basically just live and live and breathe music and practice every night, that might work for your young single people, but less so once we have families and other commitments. Absolutely. For instance, I could go to practice 3 nights a week, but it might destroy my marriage. That we don't want. And that is where, And here's the thing: is I am. Let me be really clear. I'm not saying worship teams should rehearse 3 nights a week. I'm actually saying that one, if we were more judicious about how we actually practiced, I think we would get a lot more done. And what does that look like in the practical sense? 1 night a month, a vocals only sectional where all the vocalists come. There's some vocal training. We talk about everything having to do with vocals, usually in a non pandemic atmosphere. It means a bunch of people gather around piano. You have people who don't know how to sing parts, working on parts. You have people who are going to be doing a certain amount of worship leading. You bring them into a room and you talk about things like carrying the vision of the church. What's the message going to be on? Like you allow the people that can run down the field fast, you equip them to run down the field fast. You got the people that just kind of are just inching along. You help them inch along a little bit faster. And you create a gradation of things that's equipping people to move forward better by Sunday. Same thing with the musicians. You got one of your A-list drummers, and I don't believe in A, B, and C teams, so please don't misunderstand me there. That's working with the people that can't play with a click. You've got then the other folks that are kind of split into different sections. We're going to break. This is how we play this groove. This is because most of the time, most churches want the drummers to play the parts more like than not. And it's honestly, it's one of the biggest nightmares for worship leaders. If we're going to really go there, like, oh, I've got John Bonham this week who plays 10 times louder and has to have, a 46-inch kick drum and that has the loudest snare that destroys the lead vocalist. And then there's the guy that used to play in a new metal band, and their snare drum is tuned so high, it's right smack in the middle of the vocal. And and then there's the person that has to have their cymbals. And here's the thing: if I'm a drummer, I want to play with my snare. I do want to play with my cymbals. I get that. But the point being is, for the worship leaders, they're like, I'm just trying to sing up here. I'm not a professional musician. And it's like, it's a moving target every week and week out, I mean, it's a real problem. And, and I totally understand as a drummer, kind of like as a guitar player being told, we're going to give you one set of pedals and that's all you're going to play. Honestly, you're going to get much better results, most likely. Because, again, if you explain it to people from the heads up, it says like, you know what? We've invested in the set of cymbals that we believe we want to have. They're dark, they work, and they're what you're going to be using. Are you good with that? Speak now. Awesome. And this is why. We don't want to sound as too bright. We don't want it in the way of the vocals. Cymbals bleed into the microphones no matter, even if you put the shield around there. It's just a better mix. In terms of the snare drum, we don't want a snare drum that's changing every week. They have a tendency to be right smack inside the worship leaders' vocal range. We want to actually be able to have, especially because the stuff is streaming, we don't want it to be a moving target for our volunteer mixers. Does that make sense to you? And most of the time, people, once you unpack it with respect, people are like, that's cool, they're being brought along. That's the other mistake, is it's like sometimes people don't get brought along. And that sows the seeds of dissension. We want to actually be really conscious of not sowing the seeds of dissension. And honestly, Chris, another great point. That's great. No, I love that. You want to bring people along, and you want to give them. Sometimes, here's the thing: is I'm a seasoned professional musician, right? And it means that if I'm not careful, I can have like an attitude of a seasoned professional musician. And that was one of the things I really had to learn in the beginning of playing on a worship team. I was just like, what frustrated me was the thought that the team thought it was really working. And I'm like, you have no idea what hard work looks like, but you're patting yourselves on the back, just going, oh, we're working so hard. And I'm just like, no. And and it was frustrating, and I really had, I could see all the things. And here's the other thing: is I could see all the things that the team was capable of being, and never reached, because people, here's the thing: is not every church is destined to become a Hillsong. Not every church is destined to have prominence from their worship, nor should they, right? There's only so much room for that kind of influence, and I totally get that. And it wasn't that we were bucking for that, but we were doing things where we're writing some really strong original material, and we could have been much better at what God had given us had we actually just kind of, taken off the kid gloves and gotten to work. And not every church is called to do that. I totally get that. And, yeah. All right, let me poke in here. Brett, I was laughing at your comment. I can't bring it in because of the way we connect over here on Facebook. But I love this. If you honor the office, you honor the person. If you honor the person, you honor Christ. If you honor Christ, Christ will honor you. It is all about honor. And somehow in the midst of all of this, I don't care who the leader is. We as a country forgot about honoring the office. And honestly, it started with the last presidency. I saw the way some of the folks that I knew would speak about the office. I was like, that's not biblical. That's as close as I'm going to go to this little part of the discussion. I'm not going to go any further, but we have to honor our leaders. We may not have to agree with them, but that's not the point. God sorts it out. And last time I checked, the Bible said God appoints leaders. Just saying. And we may not always agree with it. Funny, most churches I've been at, there's a drum kit, and some drummers tend to bring their own cymbals and often their own snare drums. Never seen an issue with that. So here's an interesting thing, Chris. And first of all, I love a differing opinion, so feel free to please challenge me in a non-challenging way. Here's the thing. So I think every locale is a little tiny bit different. So I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was born here. I was raised here. I played in bands here. I studied guitar here. This is pretty much all I know. So I should have said that at the beginning. Chris, can you do me a favor? Where are you located? So I could do some clicky wiki, but just tell me where you're located. I would love to know. So the thing is that one of the biggest problems is that many, and we had this conversation, many sound techs are drummers, and they have a tendency to mix for drums, which is just a disaster. Because what ends up happening is the snare drum just ends up destroying the legibility of the vocals. It's really, really a problem. And it means that if the snare drum and the cymbals are a moving target, it's really a problem. And if you don't have a fishbowl for the drummers, the bleed from the cymbals into the vocal mics is a huge problem. The volume of the snare bleeding into the congregation, mics or no mics, is a huge problem. It's the inability to contain it, just in the same way. If I'm playing out of even a 212 combo, and I got that facing front and center, and I got it down at the back of my feet, it's probably going to be a problem. The reality is that oh, look at this. I love it. My people. Shane, what's going on, my man? Melissa Dobley, hang on. I want to read from the high the what do I call her? The Mrs. Dobler. As a leader, how do you come alongside someone who is frustrated? Maybe rightly so, but their frustrations are affecting team dynamics negatively. All right, first of all, a great place to start is always in prayer, right? If there's a problem, this is, okay, let's back up a step. Bad behavior is usually the sign of some other thing being manifested in that space. Usually when stuff's going badly for somebody on a worship team, there's stuff going badly elsewhere in their life, whether it's bad behavior or they're just having a hard time. It's one of the reasons pizza night, getting the team. So I mentioned, I'm sorry, I failed to mention that in addition to getting the team together for a vocal sectional and a music rehearsal, there is the once a month not mandatory, but suggested that you get together, and you make it so much fun that people want to come to it, and they bring their spouses. Chris, specifically for the reason of like, you're taking all this time. Aha. Here's the other deal: is that if on a week that you're cycled, I were to have you for 2 nights, part of that time is going to be spent before we ever pick up our instruments, just spending a little bit of time in prayer. I'm going to be in your life, you're going to be in mine. That once a month pizza gathering. I love pizza because it's in the round, right? Everybody's grabbing a slice, you're round, you're hanging out. I'm all about being in that community. And this is one of the things is that for many worship musicians, the team is that community. I didn't do a very good job of unpacking that, and I apologize for that. Sometimes I forget what I know. And I really wanted to come at this with some practical stuff. And sometimes in the act of delivering the practical, we forget about all the other stuff. So I apologize for that. Ideally, when we come together once a month for a meal like we used to have here at my house, 20, 30 people here, people actually letting their hair down, sitting out on the deck as the sun's going down, singing songs, eating barbecue. Some people, their love language is piling a plate full of food and going to somebody's house. Other people, their love language is eating it. But for other people, it's getting together in community with their worship team. And that's where, and you, of course, invite the tech team alongside, because that's where all of a sudden you develop real relationships that carry you from week to week. And in theory, in the framework of those real relationships, on those midweek rehearsals, there's always time for prayer, because that is an opportunity. It's one of the things I love about Growth Track is that the essence of what it's about is that when we come together in serving opportunities, it's really a ministry opportunity, not with the end result of the ministry in mind, but of the discipleship, that opportunity that's intertwined in that leadership role of the leaders who are involved in that. So I'm sorry, again, I didn't do a very good job of unpacking it, because sometimes when I jump into the practical, I'm like, I just want to give you pure value on the practical so you feel that the time you invested here was well spent. But the thing is that, Chris, if you were on my team, what's going to happen is year in and year out, you and I are getting to know each other better. It means that if you're going through a hard time at work, I know about it. It means I'm praying about it. I'm sending you a text message, how to go this week, or, we're going to coffee. And so per Melissa's point, when you're in people's lives, you generally kind of know what's going on. You know what's happening with their work. You know what's happening with their personal life. You know where they're at in their walk. You have a chance to really kind of be around with people. And the great thing about being in relationship with people is that, I'm a relatively intuitive, spirit-filled leader. You can walk in the room and I'm going to have a pretty good probability that I'm going to read you real fast. Which means that when you're in a good place, I can feel it. When you're in a bad place, I'm going to smell it in the air. And not only that, I will probably have an idea of what's not right. It's a little scary, but it's just the Holy Spirit. And, not prescribing that about anybody. And Bruce, a worship musician, and I, very clear, that is a me thing. That's not an us thing. That's a me thing. But I also want to be real, right? As a leader, that's one of the things that is a gift. So I can kind of go, they're all smiles, but I'm not buying it. That means that I need to get into their life and find out a little bit of what's going on. Not so I can fix them, but so I can help them get back on track. Because everybody just, ultimately what we need is somebody championing us, somebody being alongside us, being the hands and feet of Jesus. That's kind of really, and that's the thing I love about Growth Track. I'm really, really good friends with one of the guys that's like a key leader at Church of the Highlands, and I just adore this guy because he's just every time we get on the phone, in that relationship, he's just pouring into me, even if we're just talking about a Kemper, pouring into me. And so this is one of the things is that those rehearsal opportunities seem like rehearsal opportunities on the practical side. when we take worship and take it to another level, that is a really important thing. It's really powerful to watch a worship team excel and grow from week to week. But what happens in the background that's fueling that is really important. So per Melissa's comment, you know, those little coffee dates, you just, pulling somebody aside, it's like, hey, can we meet? Not even saying, hey, you look like you're in a bad space. What's going on? It's like, hey, can we meet for coffee this week? And sometimes people are just like, they just get into a rut and they just don't know how to ask for help. And then there's some people that don't want help. That's a different issue. All right. Remember what Paul spoke about honoring the emperor. The emperor was an evil person who was persecuting the Christians. Here we go. Oh, Sydney. Oh, great. Hey, I had no idea. Hey, I mean, I don't know, but cool. One of my favorite cities. And one of my favorite things about that city, and I understand, I think they just tore that building down. But I remember going there in the Hillsong United, when United was kind of the youthish band. And there's the sign right by the Sydney Harbor Bridge where it said "One Way Jesus," and I was talking with Aiden from Young and Free, and I mentioned that to him. He said, "Oh no, they just took that building down." But I remember just being in that city because my wife used to be on the Hillsong team, and I remember being in that city and just kind of going, "Wow, how cool is this?" I love Sydney. Love it, 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 love it. Hopefully you aren't. No, Chris. No lack of honor for adding a "you" here or there. I'm very used to it. Trust me. And the cleaning of the teeth and all sorts of stuff. Not spell check it. Laugh out loud. So it's lunchtime Thursday now. I have this on while I working from. Oh, I love it. I'm touched. That is. This is my point. This is doing life together, right? Like when you're like, let's talk about the stuff that we don't always agree on, but let's unpack this, right? That is where we discover stuff, right? Because, and in humility, we kind of go, I don't know, am I too much of a hard ass? Probably. But you should have seen me like 10 years ago. Oh, I was obnoxious. Totally agree with building those relationships. I'm firmly of the belief that it's better to have a team of people who have good relationship with God but are average musicians. Amen. Than have awesome musicians who aren't in a good place with God. Tell me about it. Musical ability is needed, but a strong, active relationship with God is what will improve the worship even more. Couldn't agree more. Could not. There we go, Melissa. West Pennant Hills, a.k.a. Penno. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. All right. Oh, wow. Oh, look at this one. Is there a set of songs that worship musicians should know? Oh, boy, there's so much bait on that hook. So, okay. I'm going to go for, and I'll back up a step, see if I can frame this intelligently. Doppler's best practices. It is unreasonable, I believe, to expect musicians to have ownership of a cavernous, voluminous body of music that is undefined. 20 is a really, really... First of all, 20 songs is an awful lot. But I like to use 20 as a good number. But I actually think I could even see it being more like 12 or 16. But let's just say 20 for a moment. Active roster, of which maybe 12 are hyperactive roster, where like these are the ones that are hot, and these are the ones that, honestly, the way I would set it up would be ones that are coming, ones that are going, and ones that are here for a minute, right? Such that you're constantly bringing some new material, rotating new material in, and when you're rotating new material in, you're rotating material out. There are some like, it used to be "Here I Am to Worship." It's like it was an evergreen song. People just love that song. Like Chris Tomlin song, yeah, that one. Like there are songs that take people in the congregation someplace that is worth giving the congregation that. It's kind of like a Leonard Skinner concert. You got to give them Freebird. So if they want Freebird, give them Freebird, and so the balance of finding what that balance is for the congregation, and such that the worship team can feel that they're moving ahead in a way that fits all of that stuff. So let's just say there's 20 songs, arguably just for the sake of discussion, that are 4 incoming, that are 4 new ones that you're on ramping. There's 4 that are on their way out, and that's 8. So that's like there's 12 core songs that you're rotating around from week to week to week, and then you're kind of it's cycling in and cycling out, and then giving people, as you're on ramping songs, giving them X period of time to have that on ramp process, such that it's reasonable, it's manageable, and if you do this midweek, this once a month type of thing where the first week of the month it's the worship leaders so they can get home and work on their parts, and the second week of the month it's the rhythm section, and then they can kind of work on their arrangements on all of the things. They can play through in the couple of different keys. There's the guy key, there's the girl key. They can talk about mapping diatonic numbers to that. You can see who's getting it, who's not, and you can come alongside them. And in so doing, you've got process. Now, again, this is one of the things that teams aren't usually great about, is what is our process for on-ramping new material and off-ramping old material, such that people don't feel like I'm accountable for 5 million songs. How can I possibly own them? So great question. So is there a set of songs? The interesting thing is, one of the tools that I use is I'll go to CCLI and I'll take a look at the top songs. Now, the interesting thing is it will tell you some things that you might not have expected. What it usually tells me is there is a ton of churches that are living in worship's rearview mirror, and that they're playing basically the greatest hits in and out every week. Now, that gets us to a series of questions of, well, why is that, right? I think, one, it's a combination that's what the congregation likes, but I think there are also a fair number of teams that live in we keep the bar about here, and we don't on-ramp that many songs, and there's just a group of songs that we played over and over and over and over again that don't take a lot of rehearsal. Now, honestly, if your team's worship community cannot handle a lot of on-ramping, it works. Most important thing is we want it to work for people, right? We don't want people to feel frustrated or feel they have to quit. But at the same time, I'm getting ready to go into this situation with this church where they've been doing worship team barely has a pulse. It's like, just talk about going through the motions. Half of the team's hired hands. Nobody's being on-ramped. Nobody's being discipled. It's a mess. But the person that's been brought in is one of my favorite people in the world. I just adore her. She's just great. Absolutely just a ton of fun to work with. Brilliant musician. Great worship leader. Brilliant work ethic. And, it's just a great opportunity for me to support something that she's doing, and just kind of come in and help out. But I'm not being brought in for anything other than my guitar playing and some bass playing. So it's going to be really interesting to just kind of be the fly on the wall and see how she does what she does, because she's really, really awesome. And so, the interesting thing is that, things have been let to just kind of go to the lowest, easiest denominator. Let's hire a bunch of very secular musicians who are all on their quote-unquote spiritual journey. Whatever the heck that means. I don't know about you. And I'm one of the guys that got hired off the platform or saved off the platform. So I'm not against the concept, but like when that becomes the status quo, how revelatory can the worship really be? Again, I got brought in. I get it. I'm down with hiring musicians, and if you don't have any other options, that's one thing. But when you don't raise from within, that's a completely different thing. That's a whole different thing. I'm not mentioning the church. I'm not going to mention the church. But the thing is that It's a thing. And raising from within. That's again what I love about Church of the Highlands. Raised from within. All right, Matthew, what's going on? How you doing? Very true. I never heard anything newer than Chris Tomlin till I started playing at my current church. Never heard Bethel Elevation, and I'm laughing with you, not at you. Elevation, of course. New shout out to the Lord. Hillsong, but nothing new. It's an interesting thing. Part of it is, um, it happens for a lot of reasons, right? Like if the church really, really just resonates, it's an interesting thing. All right, I can point the lens at myself, maybe a little too well, but the thing is this: is that, and we're going to go to 7:30. Just by the way, um, is this is that there was a point when I started listening back to some of those Hillsong songs, and I started having my nostalgic moments. I was like, oh, it's happened to me, right? That was my Chris Tomlin. Oh God, it was just, and I was like, okay, I get it. And so, the thing is that we all have our romantic moments that were kind of lived around certain worship songs. And I respect that and I love that because I certainly have that feeling. Those Hillsong records that were huge when I was getting saved, I put those on, especially the United ones. I'm just like, they take me to a place emotionally that I would love to live at. I can't, but I could totally understand why, as a congregation, living there is easy, and especially if you don't have to on ramp a lot of songs, it makes it easy to go week in and week out. And if that's something that works for the congregation, if it works, it works. And then once every so often you on ramp the next "Here I Am to Worship." But it does come at a cost, right? So, and it's an interesting thing, Matthew. One of the neat things is you get a chance to, you got the chance to experience all this other music, and all of a sudden, and I'm sure you perhaps were already listening to some or all of that. But it's the great thing is that when all of a sudden you open the doors, like, wow, there was a lot of music out there I didn't know about. It's the neat thing is it does provide for a sense of discovery. And I do, the other thing is that there is this changing of guard that happens, and you're seeing it even with Jesus culture, right? They're not in their 20s. They're having kids. They're dealing with being adults, and it changes your perspective. It's a very fascinating thing to watch these teams change, right? All right. So P-dub culture is a mess in general. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, but I will unpack this. Lack of theology, really don't care about tradition at all. Lots of feelings. Um, Easy believism. You know, I will say this, Matthew, is first of all, I don't know where you're based. So if you will be so kind, where are you based? Because I would love to know. Um, I had no clue. I came to church fresh out of my metal band. I'm liking this guy already. Um, so let me know where you're coming from. That would be great. So here's the thing. Is it's like I think we live in a very strange time. One of the good things is that the church is no longer kind of hidden, where church kids were really straighty 180. Where every pendulum swings, like it or not, it is part of the natural thing that happens. I have been happy about the fact that since, how do I say this? There was a period of time where the sticky jeans and skinny jeans, rather, that uh, cool, awesome. That's a lovely area, by the way. Uh, First of all, you're in an area that's in a tremendous amount of turmoil. So it's only, dare I say, natural, in not necessarily the best sense of the word, that people are going to be trying to figure this thing out. The good news is that God is really faithful. Usually, eventually, people figure out that they need a little bit more, and they kind of begin to go. I'm hearing a lot from the world they get hungry for genuine, and that's the great thing about the genuine relationship. And more importantly, it's also the great thing about the relationship. Uh, the interesting thing, about the whole. I will be very careful how I embrace this question. So if you see me just kind of easing my way through this, just work with me. I actually really love the fact that the Baptist churches, you know, it, how do I say this? I watched a very strange range of things on television, and one of the shows that I watched was from a time when everybody kind of went to church. People believed in going to church, and one could argue that when the church, how do I say this? Oh, can I say this? We've become we've become part of some of these polarized conversations, not always in the best light. And there's lots of diversity in the church, and I celebrate that. But some of the factions really have done a lot to alienate non-believers, and it's really, I think it grieves Jesus, because Jesus is not out there going, you. Um, so, one could argue that at a time where things were a little bit easier, uh, thank you. You know, um, it just made it. I think church should be about one choice, and that's Jesus and good discipleship. I think sometimes we get out of our lane a little bit. And here's the thing: is like God's going to figure out a lot of this stuff. I think we all live in glass houses. So I think we all want to be really conscious of throwing stones. But if there are people that are living in lifestyles that we don't agree with, I think rather than throwing stones, I think we should be praying for them. Praying that this time of whatever the heck it is that's happening, and it ain't good, but it's time for us to be praying. It's time for us to be praying from people that are really far away from Jesus, that would probably be a lot happier if they knew what we know. But unfortunately, we've gotten to a place where there's a lot of them and us. And as opposed to, we want to bring everybody together so Jesus can actually demonstrate what he's about. And, it's complicated times. Complicated times. Here's the thing. This is like, let's see. You keep pulling me into it. So let me see how I can say this. I can say this like this. There's the word, and then there's the word. How about that? Okay. Let's see here. Hang on a second. Okay. Oh, winging it. Oh no, he's gonna draw me into a winging it comment. Hang on a second. Winging it. Oh my word. I have over 600 songs on my iPad. We have a holy cow, Lonnie. Oh my word. You're gonna need to upgrade there. Uh, Hold on. Okay, hang on a second. Sadly, that's funny, Melissa, on the spelling thing. Lonnie, I have over 600 songs on my iPad. We have about 40 that we play. That's probably 10. Something. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think there are. I think there are studious musicians that even when songs aren't rostered, they just kind of stay up on top of them. If you don't weed out the stuff, we're not doing it, we're not doing it, we're not doing it, makes it really hard for people to feel confident about the body of work. I know it does me when there's too many songs. Uh, would you say that a leader and a team who wing it on Sunday mornings? This is Shane, by the way, my dear buddy. Is sufficient cause to walk away from the team? I've had conversations over the years, but the idea of bringing your best is a foreign idea, and no one has the time to prepare before Sunday morning. That's a really great question. I think first of all, I'm going to say take it to prayer, because Here's the thing. One of the things the Bible does not say is like, if you find an environment is unhealthy for you, and your desire to bring excellence and honor on a Sunday morning, that the environment is actually not conducive to that process. The Bible doesn't say you must stay there and serve until you. It doesn't say that. And there is a certain amount of honoring leaders in their vision, but there also comes a point, having been in a couple of churches, where I'm just like, I can't serve you anymore. It's not good for you. It's not good for me. It's time. And the great thing is about prayer is God usually does a great job of revealing and releasing. And the important thing, this word of covering, right? When it's time, you probably know. And when it is time, going to your leaders and just kind of going, I need to leave, and this is why. And, the other thing is that, and Shane, I've known you a long time. It's always good to go to your leaders and just kind of go, hey, this affects me really deeply. And it's possible, and if I'm not speaking for you, but given the question, me speaking into your situation potentially, that I may not be able to do this for an extended period of time. And I need you to know that. And I need you to know this is the way it's affecting me. And that at least gives them the option to tell you to buzz off, pray about it. And usually, I would, if it were me, I would say, I would really love it if I could encourage you to think about it and maybe pray about it. And let's meet for coffee in a couple of weeks. Give the Holy, here's the deal, is that this is what I refer to as leading up. Because one of a couple of things is going to happen is they're going to go like, oh, flipping Shane again with the rehearsing. I'd like to kick that Doug Doppler guy. But, or if you say, I'd love it if you could just think about it, and if you would, just pray about it a little bit. You're opening the door for the Holy Spirit to get in there and either convict them or not. And then you have the opportunity to circle back. But the other thing is that, it's like a can. You can only kick that can so far down the road. Right? It's also just kind of going, hey, let's talk again in a couple of weeks. It allows you to have a mature conversation. And most importantly, leading up is about speaking your mind in a respectful and submitted way. But we also do have the privilege of being able to speak our minds as long as we do it in love and grace. And that's an amazing thing. And sometimes we find out we're in the wrong place. And that happens. I've been there. I'd say no, it's good. Not every church does all the same songs. Absolutely. You should know the ones that you need at your church. It will completely change depending on the church. Absolutely. Absolutely. Shane, depends on how good they are at winging it. I realize it's not funny, Shane. I apologize, but that's actually really funny. Depends on how good they are at winging it. Some musicians get a song they've never heard of on Sunday morning and can play it brilliantly and have awesome time of worship. Others need to have a couple of weeks to practice it and be able to play it well. And if there are people in the band who are the latter, and those who are in control are the former, arrange it how it works for them, and then there's a problem. Yeah. I've been in enough winging it situations kind of in traveling and whatnot, where it is sometimes a pervasive problem where rehearsal is kind of a winging it kind of thing. And it's just kind of like, that's the MO. My heart is this. I think if they knew that Jesus was showing up on Sunday, which he does, by the way, but was actually going to walk through the doors of their church, I wonder if they'd have a winging it rehearsal week. Just saying. Lonnie, I lead in a very rural north central Washington church. Small town, small church. They hired me to help bring them change. Ooh, I love that. You're speaking my love language. I mean, from hymns to CCM, started bringing stuff like Elevation. They were like, we can't do that. We said, I said, oh yes, you can, and we did. It's an interesting thing because there is the like we want to change, we want to change, we don't want to change, we don't want to change, and the great thing is sometimes it's an interesting thing is when you get brought in and hired, the covenant has been made is you're here to bring change. So it's an interesting thing. I don't want to get too in the grooves on that because I'm sure there's a longer conversation. But it's like the covenant we made was you brought me here. I left wherever I was to come here and to bring change. That was the covenant. I love it. Shane, it's taken me at least 5 years for me to get to them to use Planning Center. Occasionally, the set list gets posted a week in advance, but only the practice rehearsal sound check is an hour uh, on Sunday morning. If there are problems, usually there isn't time to resolve them or before church starts. So I'm scheduling myself less and less. Okay, that is the law of diminishing returns in action right there. Um, Shane, pray about it. That's my best advice. Just kind of go because honestly, I've known you for a long time. I actually have a gift for you. You don't know that. Um, but that sort of stuff at a certain point really can affect you on a deep level. And if you're at that place, then you need to make some hard decisions, and you need to talk it over with Anne Marie. Um, and you need to spend some serious time in prayer. And I would suggest adding some fasting to that. Lonnie, what are the problems? Shane, North Central. I'm in Puyallup. Uh, oh, I love it. Uh, Musical mostly. There were never any discussions about arrangements. Oh, chat is kind of jumping here. There we go. About arrangements. So there are typical who's playing that part. How many times are we playing that bridge? You've changed the key. Usually, I'm just the guitar player. Yeah, roadkill is a good expression. Brett, we need to be careful about our preferences that in them we don't choose them over his preference. Yeah, it's a really, I think, first of all, Brett, you're totally right. I think the thing is I think God has a lot of grace around what he lets us do. I am actually, and I don't think it's abusing free will. I think he kind of lets us figure some of the stuff out. Because I think in the figuring out, there's a lot of iron sharpening iron. But I think the other thing about kind of being, in a prayer zone together, that's where that kind of that pre rehearsal, leaving a couple of minutes for prayer. Is there anything I could pray for you about? Hey, how's this going? That check-in time. That gets us kind of on this, we're kind of marching ants moving in the same direction. Um, but that, we do need to be conscious of that. But I think there is also a lot of grace around kind of what we have as our preferences and what we don't. But yes, we also ultimately, we know. Here's the thing: is I think the other thing is we want to be looking for like, hey, when the pastor stepped out on the platform, did we already kind of raise the roof a little bit such that they were able to bring that message? Because ultimately, in going secular on you, we're the opening act. So basically, we're supposed to rock the audience, and I just excuse me while I go slightly secular on this. Supposed to rock the audience. So when the pastor comes out, the headliner, they're like, "Hey, worship was awesome this morning. Let's give the worship team just a little bit of something for the time invested. Let's thank all the people back there in tech and everybody that shows up, the first in, last out. Just want to just say thank you. And most importantly, let's bow our heads in prayer before we get into the message. What we want to do is we want to make that moment super easy, as opposed to like more out of tune vocals, bad arrangements. They messed up the beginning of the song because the key was bad. And the pastor's got to come out, and they're just and got to come out and just like It's kind of like loving your children when they destroy the kitchen, and you were away on vacation, and they left dog cans out on the counter for a week, and you come back into the house and it smells like week old dog cans on your counter in 80-degree heat. You're just kind of like, thanks for the mess, and I get to lead after that. It's just like, it's just not cool. And we want to be wise stewards. So yes, it's a balance and finding out. But the ultimate metric is kind of what happens when the pastor comes up. Does he have to kind of clean up after us because we really weren't prepared? And that's ultimately really what it comes down to is we're, I think, a very important part. And I'm always talking about serving the worship leader, but ultimately we're kind of serving the worship leader who ultimately helps break the atmosphere so that the senior pastor, whoever's bringing the word, can step up on the platform. And we've already broken through some of the spiritual resistance that's in the room from people just kind of showing up on a day maybe they didn't feel like showing up but really needed to be there. And instead of being part of the solution, we become part of the problem. Not okay, in my humble opinion. Lonnie, all that should be known prior to Sunday morning. It's all laid out in the set list. PCO, love that, love it, love it, love it. I'll send them all videos of the songs so they can listen and learn prior to Sunday morning. Amen. P.S. Key should be known prior. You think? Laugh out loud. Change, Chris. Key should be known prior, but sometimes you get things and work, and you need to change the key. Absolutely. So, but here's the thing. Ideally, that should happen in rehearsal, right? We just kind of go, hey, you know what? We need to move this thing. And that's where the diatonic numbers come in. If I'm in a team that knows diatonic numbers, we're just moving it up as opposed to like B flat. Oh no. We're just like, hey, that's the 1. Oh, okay. The 4, E flat. Great. The 5, F. I got this. Done. Boom, boom, boom. Moving on. Just saying. But here's the thing is that, it's a journey. And yes, and here's this is the other thing. Backing up a step, Chris. One of the things that I did when I was the worship and creative arts director is I mapped out every worship leader's vocal range, and I would send them any song that I was going to bring into rotation in advance, and they would pick the key. So before anybody got that song, the worship leader actually had to invest the time to find the key that was the best key for them, from the lowest note to the highest note. I usually had a pretty good idea. And then by the time I had the team, the musicians rehearsing the song, they were rehearsing it in the right key for the right musician. And that is to say, I had it broken down to the point where the songs were listed in PCO by who was leading them. So when I rostered it by who was leading it, the right key and chart would load automatically. That's taking care of your musicians because you're thinking ahead. Thinking ahead is a good thing. Makes people feel cared for. Yes, and OnSong makes that really easy. Amen. A gift. What a coincidence. I have things for you and Mrs. Gear Whisperer. I love it. Semper Gumby, always flexible. I love it. All right, let's see what we got going on over here. That's really lovely. Doug, always learning something new watching your broadcast and look forward to watching. Thank you so much, Chris. That's lovely. Oh, okay, hang on a second. I'm going to stay away from that one. All right. I wing it on a regular basis because I can. I prepare and practice, then on Sunday can play something completely fresh. Okay. So I'm going to split some differences here. I think when we're talking about winging it here, we're talking about the general lack of preparedness. We're kind of showing up. Oh, it's that song. What key is that in? Oh, how many times we played through the verse? As opposed to like, hey, we're going to break out here. And Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're just kind of talking about, hey, you know what? We're going to purposely flow in this. And, I asked Nigel, and it was funny, and you can go back and watch it if you must, but when he was on from Hillsong a couple episodes ago, probably 4 episodes now, But I said, what was the kind of the most kind of like, oh, can't believe it happened moment? And he missed a call. And the great thing about kind of having some calls, verse. Oh, sorry, hold on. I wanted to do some Vulcan thing and I completely failed. Verse, right? Chorus. I think Pinky was our bridge because you couldn't really do a B very well. He'd go around and hold the microphone and go bridge, and Michael. But the point being is that the thing is that having the ability to kind of just go, let's loop this, right, and then bring it down, and then sorry, you can't see that. Bring it down and gradually bring it up, such that people know that we're going to loop this, we're going to bring it down, gradually bring it up, and we're going to loop it as we do that, such that you're letting people know where you're going. That's opposed to like, hey, we're up there, like, are we doing the chorus twice here? Is anybody, and it's just, and let's also let's not forget the poor folks in projection. Just saying, they're up there kind of like, and just so you know, if you ever are back there in projection, you get it wrong. Everybody looks back at you because they think it's you. That is so not cool. Not cool. To make them basically have the stress. By the time they're done, they're like, I need to just lie down for a little bit with a blanket. It's just so not cool to do that to people. Oh, oh. Oh, look at this, Melissa Doppler. I love that you would also save in PCO the key for the lead vocalist. So if I came back to it again, we would know the key from our last time. Caring for people. Preparedness is caredness. It's just kind of like it demonstrates for people that you wanted it to be easy when they walk through the door. You had done some of the heavy lifting as a leader. I wanted you to know that I would go the extra mile such that if we needed to run a little bit late on a rehearsal, we could do that. But every minute you invested, I invested 2 or 10 or 20. But, I realize not everybody's going to do that, and I'm kind of like my own version of a lunatic. But that investment, the fact that Melissa would remember that, I wanted my leaders to kind of know he cares that I'm not singing at the upper edge of my register, ripping my voice out, because it's the flippin' wrong key for me. Just like here's the thing is it, Chris, totally hear you on this. There's a lot that we can do to practically manage this stuff. That sometimes, we are winging things sometimes. And the idea is when we take a step back and go, how do we plan things such that in the process of doing it, we run the most efficient rehearsals we can. People, thanks, Lonnie, that we really are taking care of people. All right. So look, this has been great. We went to 740. I love you guys. Love you guys. This is pertinent, powerful stuff. I just want to say thank you for hanging out. We've got some guests coming up. Hang on just one sec. Let me double check on the now. Let's get this in here right now. No, not on that window. Not on that window. He can read a calendar. Okay. Now, I had previously mentioned that our buddy Tyler Logan was going to be there next week, but he's not. All right, so next Tuesday is election night. I'm going to be here because I just need to be. So I'm not anticipating 5 million people showing up, but I will be here. I look forward to seeing you. On the 10th, we're going to have Chris Rocha and Mike X Zuniga. Those guys are, by the way, foolish me, Worship Musician just launched its first ever Músicos Adoradores all Spanish edition. This is huge for us. You can actually just go to worshipmusician.com. That magazine is up there if you speak or read Spanish. But for us, this is a really big deal because, there is a lot of energy thrown at the American church. That came out wrong. Foot in mouth. Let me replay that. The English-speaking North American church, but we really felt called to reach the Spanish-speaking church both here in the United States and across the Americas and across the globe. So we are so excited about this. If you have any friends that attend Spanish-speaking churches, or are not at a Spanish-speaking church but speak Spanish, please share that magazine with them. It's a very, very big deal to us. The new issue of the magazine is also out. We are just so thankful to be able to partner with you, with your churches, and be able to have whatever opportunity we can to share anything that we can with you guys. It's just such a privilege. So Chris Rocha and Mike Zuniga are they amongst other things. Chris plays guitar with and produces Miel San Marcos, which is quote unquote like the Hillsong of Latin America. They are huge, sold out Madison Square Garden, huge. And Mike's the bass player, the touring bass player. Those guys are awesome. So they'll be here on the 10th, and then on the 17th, we got my buddy. Let me just make sure it's the 17th and not the 24th. Yep. My buddy, and I don't know why it's not showing up on my calendar here, but we're going to be having my buddy Tyler Logan, who is a brilliant guitar player. He was originally going to be on tonight, but he's got some sounds that are coming out on a platform that I can't mention what they are yet, but he's got some amazing Helix sounds, and he's a brilliant guitar player. He's one of my favorite guys. He is awesome. So he's going to bring the thunder. So, Lonnie, thank you, man. ¿Dónde está el baño? That is a good question. Yo sé. So in any case, I love you guys. It's really, it's such a pleasure to kind of actually be able to talk about some of the gritty stuff, right? Church isn't always easy, but you guys have been so great. So thank you so much, Lord. I just give thanks for this time of fellowship, Lord. I just pray that it's that blend of fellowship and partnership and friendship that I know that you want for us. And I just pray that everybody leaves with a little bit something more than they came. And I just thanks for the investment of the time that people have made. And Lord, I just pray that they find more and more joy in their services and in their teams and in the relationships thereof. And as anybody has to make some of these hard decisions, Lord, I just pray that they do so seeking you in prayer, never in emotion, but always based on prayer and hearing your word and distilling that into their decisions judiciously. We ask all these things in Jesus' mighty name. Amen. Thanks so much, you guys. God bless.